Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today I'm going to be speaking with Michael Cookerly. He grew up in Maryland, was very active as a kid, then moved to California to work in the outdoor industry, working at ski resorts in the winter and then river guiding in the summer. And then he was doing a lot of hiking and trail running where he started to accumulate a lot of injuries. Looking for solutions, he eventually found FP, and he's going to be sharing with us his journey through FP, a little bit about his background and how it has helped him so far. So let me add him right here. There he is. What's up, Michael?
Hey, Rodney.
How's
Good
it going?
morning.
Good morning.
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Let me adjust my camera here really quick. All right, so yeah, just start telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of a quick intro, kind of gave people a bit of a background, but just kind of go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. I heard a little bit of the intro and I think you covered the basics. Yeah, I grew up in Maryland and grew up like a really active. So I grew up in the 90s, right? Like before the internet. So like we were just outside, like playing outside, riding our bikes. Grew up really active, went to college, had the pretty typical college experience. But I was like really into partying too. So I developed a lot of, I think, bad habits in that way. Graduated college, got into a sales career in Baltimore. And it was just like the 9 to 5 corporate grind. I was kind of immersed in this like high level, like technology sales world. And then got kind of burnt out. I did that for 5 years, got kind of burnt out on working in an office every day and pretty much packed up my car and moved to California and started doing like ski resort work. Fell into a river guiding career, really fell in love with that. It was just like all winter, I was riding my snowboard down like big mountains, and all summer just driving boats down rivers in California. And I was really into trail running, like hiking, just spending pretty much all of my time spent outside, like using my body and being really, really active.
Yeah, so you think that, you started in a sales job, you were partying, so most people would consider that somewhat of an unhealthy lifestyle. And then you moved to California, you were outdoors most of the time, you were very, very active. Some people would consider that a very healthy lifestyle, but you still were, I guess, you still found yourself dealing with injuries from that time, correct?
Yeah, and so kind of honestly, the transition to the outdoor sports was almost like therapy. Like the sales life, like living in Baltimore, working in sales, partying all the time, it was very unhealthy. But I was like young, fit, had a lot of energy. I could deal with it, but it was still really bad. And I kind of used the outdoors as like a therapy to kind of get away from like the need to party all the time and do crazy stuff. It just like converted into outdoor stuff. So it was more productive. But yeah, people would see it as healthy, but I still feel like I was just like filling a void with like adrenaline sports. But yeah, honestly though, to answer your question, for the first couple years when I was outside playing outside all the time, I didn't have any pain. Like my body felt really resilient. It felt good. And I kind of prided myself on that. I'm like, I can play outside, go hard all day long, and I don't feel any pain. My back doesn't hurt. I never even knew what knee pain felt like, right? But then a couple years into it, I started to develop those injuries. And once they started, they just piled on. Like it escalated really quick.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us a little bit about the injuries, kind of when they started, and yeah, just kind of run through the list and what you were
Yeah.
what you were dealing with.
So yeah, kind of just like chronologically, it was like late 2018. I was out on a hike. I was actually at the ski resort I worked at. There was no snow there yet. So I was like on a hike run. So I was kind of hiking a little bit, kind of running a little bit, and I was running up this like big slab of rock kind of, and my toe, it felt like I sprained my big toe, like the joint, like the big toe joint. It felt like I sprained it. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And I ended up just continuing to hike. I was like, usually things like that just went away. You know, they kind of worked themselves out. But it was like a couple days and it was still hurting. And that was kind of the first like red flag. I was like, this isn't really going away. It kind of lingered for quite a while. And then later in that winter, like spring of 2019, I was snowboarding and doing something really routine, and I tweaked my low back. And I had been snowboarding 100-day seasons, couple seasons in a row, and like never hurt my back. But this time I was just going down this little hill, and I like kind of like pumped a little bit, and I tweaked my low back. And I was like, well, that's weird. And I never experienced that before. So that was that. Same thing, it kind of fizzled away, but it was kind of lingering a little bit, but it fizzled away enough, went into river guiding season that spring. So a few months later, got back into trail running because I was like back down if there was no more snow. So I'm out on the trails and I was trail running a lot, and I got a sharp pain in my knee. Like I remember running downhill one day and I got this really sharp pain in my right knee. And I never knew what knee pain really felt like. Like I'd never had that before. So I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. So I ran through it, took a couple of days off. It went away. Tried to run again. Same thing. That sharp pain came back like 10 minutes into my run. And then, for a couple months, I ran through it. But dude, that pain like never went away. It just got worse. And the more I pushed it, the worse it got. Like I wasn't able to just like run through it, you know? So I pretty much stopped. And that was kind of that was a big transition because even the back injury kind of healed, but I was like, my knee is not healing. And it just stopped me from running. I was like, all right, we don't run anymore. So that's when it really started to affect my lifestyle. And then fast forward, river guiding season ended that year. I moved to a new state, ended up trying CrossFit. So I went to this CrossFit gym. Dude, I did 2 CrossFit classes. And on the second one, I re-injured my low back. We were doing this like crazy workout. And in the middle of the workout, my back just like seized up. I actually like collapsed onto the ground. And one of the trainers ran over and they were like, what happened? What happened? I'm like, it's my low back. And they were like, oh yeah, just go stretch it out. Like take a break.
See you next class.
They hit me up 2 days later and they were like, are you coming to, that was like on a Saturday. They were like, you come into class on Monday night. And I'm like, no, dude, my back is smoked. And they were like, we'll scale the workout for you. And they meant well. Like, I get it. CrossFit's cool. Like, you get the community. But yeah, they were like, come, we'll scale it for you. Like, I get it. It's about the community more than like being healthy. So they tried, but yeah, then that pretty much just kicked off. Like my Achilles started to hurt. My back was always hurting. My knee was always hurting. Dude, I started spent a lot of time with a lot of PTs, a lot of different like specialists. And that was just kind of the kickoff of like this crazy downward spiral of like, I felt like my body was just like kind of falling apart.
Yeah. And then when you did the CrossFit and stuff like that, you also mentioned that you did some yoga and mobility training. Was that before the CrossFit incident or was that after?
It was before and then continued. So okay. Yeah, 2018, right? A couple months before that, I hurt my toe running. I got really into yoga and I was doing it kind of on a regular basis. And I continued to do it that winter, 2019, before my back, like I hurt my back snowboarding. I was going to yoga probably like 2 to 5 times a week. And then I continued doing it like really heavy. When I hurt my knee, I was like going to yoga and then going on runs. And dude, I continued to do yoga pretty much until I found functional patterns.
Wow.
And a lot of Kelly Starrett, like mobility WOD, I found him on YouTube and I was very like impressionable by the way he talked about things. And it resonated with me. I don't know, it made sense, even though it ended up, so this is my theory. I think all that yoga, all that mobility stuff led to those chronic soft tissue injuries. but I don't know, who knows? It could have been coincidence, but yeah, I was doing a lot of that when the injury started to pile up.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. When I first started working out was around high school, and I did a lot of lifting, never really stretched. Then I heard of yoga and the mobility stuff, and I thought, I'm not stretching, so I should start implementing some of that so I could prevent injuries. And for me, it was the same thing. The more I did it, the more suddenly I started to feel things hurt, or things became more unstable, and then it was it was a downward spiral. So yeah, I had a similar experience to yours in that regard. So then you said, I don't know if you want to go too much into this, but you said you've tried chiropractic, physical therapy, massage therapy. Yeah, if you want to kind of go a little bit into that, just kind of what things you did do and how you tried to address and how those helped, if at all. Yeah,
Yep.
go ahead.
I was counting the other day. I was like up to like 6 physical therapists, 2 chiropractors, and 3 massage therapists that I was just like on a cycle with, you know? And I was the kind of person, like, once I started feeling the pain and I realized it was an issue, I was like, I don't care how much it costs, whatever it takes, like, I'll fix it so I can get back to river guiding, get back to snowboarding, get back to like steady state cardio. I was like addicted to like long endurance, like hikes and stuff, I was like addicted to working out and not feeling pain. Well, I wanted to feel discomfort. I wanted to push myself, but I didn't want joint pain. There's a big difference,
Yeah.
But I had that like David Goggins mentality, like that. I was very impressionable to that too. Sorry, the house, they have these automatic doors. They're really loud when they open the windows.
Yeah, I see it opening behind you. It's all good.
I'll let that stop and I'll continue. But yeah, so dude, once the knee pain started, I was just hitting up physical therapists, going in, being like, hey, this is what's going on. And they would do their best. And they'd be like, you need more ankle mobility. They would do like soft tissue work. They'd be like, work your glutes more. Like they had the right ideas, I think, but yeah, none of it really worked, Like I would go to them for a while, but then I was like, this isn't really working. I would just kind of go back to like pushing it on my own. But yeah, I went through, I had 2 long stints. I had 2 physical therapists that I was really dedicated, like 2-3 times a week. I would go to them for like
For
6
how
weeks.
long? 6 weeks? Okay.
Yeah, like the full program. I remember 2 of them in particular. And at that point I was feeling a lot of pain. So I was like, whatever you guys say, like I'll do whatever, And I really tried. I was really dedicated to it. But not the best. It would like kind of work, but then I'd go back and hike again and like something else would get hurt,
I see. So then, and tell us how you found FP, kind of that story that you mentioned, that you were doing yoga, and then how you found FP.
Yoga. I was doing yoga at night. So looking back on it, there's a lot of things wrong, but yeah, I was doing a yoga class. It was pretty intense. It wasn't like chill. It was a very active yoga class. And anyway, doing it in the middle of the class, my back kind of flared up, like kind of seized up again, like low back pain. And at this point, my back was fully suspect. Like I didn't trust it at all. But we're doing it in the middle of the class. My back really seized up, got a bunch of pain. I finished the class, went home, was laying in bed that night on Instagram, and just happened to see a post. It was like functional patterns. It's like, is yoga bad for you? Something to that extent. And I was like, this is really coincidental, right? So I remember showing my friend, I'm like, look at this. They're saying yoga's bad for us, because they were really into yoga too. So then pretty much I probably spent a couple hours. I went through every post on the FP page. And at that point, Rodney, I was pretty deep into like all the pain issues. They were there. They were like settled in. And what was really bothering me about it was I couldn't walk or run without pain. Like hiking and running exacerbated my issues worse. And then when I saw all the FP posts about like your gait cycle having to be good or your body will be messed up, I'm like, that's it. Like my gait cycle is hurting me right now. I was like, I have this So it really resonated because I couldn't go hike or run without like my body getting messed up. And I'm like, these guys are talking about like being able to hike and run well or walk and run well. And that's what leads to having a healthy body. So it really resonated. I found it at a very good time.
And then, how was it? Tell us about your experience with FP
Yeah.
and how that went.
So I was still very much like immersed in the outdoor space. So I was living in Montana when I found FP, but I was planning on going back to California for river guiding season.
Mhm.
So I was looking up practitioners, found a local practitioner near where I lived in California, hit him up like the next day because I just wanted to talk to someone about this. I was like desperate for answers, you know? So I called him and I'm like, hey, like I live here in the summer. I'd love to come meet with you. These are my like this is what I'm experiencing. He was like, yeah, cool. Like come on down. So a couple months, I moved back to California. I went and did like 1 or 2 sessions with him. But then I went back to like full-time river guiding. So I was like, I can't do FP and river guide. So I was like, okay, did a couple sessions with him. Honestly, don't even remember them that much. But then when river guiding season ended, I was like, all right, full-time FP. Like I'm 100% dedicated to like getting my shit together. So I started going like 2-3 times a week. But that's all I did. I didn't change my lifestyle. I was still kind of partying, eating grains, like not drinking good water, doing a lot of like degenerate activity. And I was going to all these sessions and it shocked my body really bad. Like my body didn't take well to the movements. It made things kind of worse in a way because it was stressing me out so much that I wasn't getting the progress I wanted in FP. But looking back on it, I only did it for like 2 months, you know? I did it for like 2 months and I'm like, I'm not healed yet. What's going on? And yeah, looking back, I like kind of cringe looking back on it. I was such a mess in a lot of ways. But yeah, I did it for a couple months. I did it for like 2 months, pretty hard. It kind of worked. Like the guy was really good. He was really high level practitioner. And in the sessions we did good, but outside the gym, I wasn't doing it right, you know?
And you kind of mentioned that you were also, one, you didn't change your lifestyle. Two, you were also trying to do a lot of it on your own, meaning you were still putting that stress in your body. So when we talk about less is more, you kind of weren't applying that to your protocol. Before we get into more with the FP, were there some struggles? It seems like you kind of took it on pretty easily. Like you found it, you hit him up, and you did it. If you had any struggles, was it after that kind of stint where it didn't seem to work for you? Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the other part.
Yeah, I think there's struggles kind of the whole way, especially this is, I think, common with a lot of people that get really into FP and they did something before that. They did some kind of sport or jujitsu, or they were like a high level athlete. And to leave that world and walk into the FP world, it's a major shock, you know? Like my outdoor sports life was like a lot of social validation. It was all my friends. It gave me a lot of stimulation. It gave me a lot of fulfillment. And to walk away from that and just walk into FP, where it's like a big ego check, you know? That alone was it stressed me out a lot. It was a major shock to my system. Mm-hmm. But I think that's part of it. I think a lot of FP guys were really immersed in one world and they had to leave it and get into the FP world. And it's you have some growing pains there. At least I did.
Yeah. So were people around you kind of, did you find yourself maybe not fitting in as much with the people around you? Was that part of it?
I was always kind of a weird guy to begin with. So, but yeah, totally. Like people were like, what are you doing FP for? They're like, and it wasn't, no one, luckily I have good friends for them. Like everyone's really cool, you know? So it wasn't very toxic. No one was like, don't do FP. Like you're making a mistake. But either they just stop hitting you up or they're still doing their thing, but they just don't involve you. But a few people that were kind of close to me were like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, well, my back really hurts, among other things. Like, this is really important. Back pain is such a big deal. Like, I have to live with my spinal cord and my sacrum forever. Like, I don't want it to be all degenerated and be in all this pain. If I'm in this pain at 30, what am I going to feel like at 60, you know? I'm like, this is very important. And they're like, well, why don't you just go to a real doctor? And I'm like, because they don't, I tried that already. It didn't work that well. And not to discredit them, but I'm like, these FP guys have all these results. I mean, I look at their Instagram and it's like, oh, you just trust Instagram? And I'm like, well, kind of. Like, that's the world we live in. So yeah, there was that. I got that pushback from a few people. And it's like, they didn't want to hear that some movement guy could heal your back pain, you know?
Yeah, that's a lot of what I hear from my clients as well, and to an extent, what I heard all the way back when I first started. So yeah, so then we mentioned the. So now let's go into a little bit of your lifestyle, right? Because that was another kind of struggle in the sense that you didn't really change too much of that when you first started FP.
Yeah.
And then now kind of start going into maybe the in between. I know you moved back to Maryland for a little bit. So maybe if you want to go a little bit into that, and then how you got back into FP and what changed that second time.
Yeah, it's kind of, I look at it as in like three phases, right? When I first started FP the first time, I changed nothing about my lifestyle. I just incorporated FP. So my diet was still really bad. My relationship with like the sun and light, my water, like my substance abuse and like alcohol was a problem. All these things, I didn't change nothing. I was still going on big hikes, you know. I didn't change my movement that much. And it didn't work well at all. Like, the sessions would kind of work, but it just didn't stick. And then the second phase, I bailed on the first try at FP, moved back to Maryland. And then I was like, I knew in my head, I didn't know like consciously, but I think I knew subconsciously. I was like, I have to change a lot of my habits. FP is not the thing, like not the issue right now. I'm like, my lifestyle is an issue right now. So, and like you kind of said this yesterday, I asked you how you got such good results because your before and after is so dramatic, you know? And you were like, it's not just one thing. It's like a lot of little things over time and they kind of add up. And so it was like, I had to start drinking clean water. I had a serious like food disorder, like eating disorder. I had to get that in check. I had to get my drinking in check. I had to get my sleep in check. I had to stop doing a lot of activity, you know? I had to change my career. My career was very like taxing on my body. I had to find like a whole new career, you know? So I had to change. So like I had to change 60 other things before I could even think about FP again.
Yeah. So then go ahead.
Yep. So I did that, and that was a struggle. That was like the darkest moment. It was tough, man. I was pretty lost. But I knew I was like, I just have to go through this. I'm already too deep into this. I'm not going back, you know? So I just started chipping away at my dysfunctions, my bad behavior, all these things, little by little. And it's like, it doesn't change overnight. But I did that over the course of last summer. I spent the whole summer in Maryland and just started chipping away at things, you know, trying to get my life together. And then I felt somewhat stable. I'm like, okay, I got all these other things in order. I was getting decent sunlight. I was eating good, like pretty good. I was drinking good water. I was calming myself down. I was over the need to exercise all the time. And I was like, all right, I'm ready to do FP again.
Were you still in pain, by the way?
Dude, it was worse. It was way worse. Yeah. I was getting SI joint pain. So my back pain morphed into just like sacrum and SI joint pain. And once that happened, it was a wrap. Like that pain, that SI joint pain was 24/7, like chronic. And every time I moved, every time I took a step, it felt like it was like grinding. It was really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's when, once the SI joint pain started, it was very uncomfortable. It gave me a lot of anxiety. And yeah, it kind of peaked. Like that's when I was like, all right.
Michael, you cut off. Let me see if you come back. Can you just comment and see if I'm frozen or if Michael's frozen? How are you guys? Oh shit, kick them off. Okay, kick them off. Let's see if we can come back in. So something to touch on that Michael was talking about was the whole other behaviors that kind of impact your progress with your body. So stress level is important. Being able to get outside, drink good water. Nadi did a live with Carrie B, and she was talking about the exclusion zone water and how that is very related to your fascia. So if you don't get other things in order, it's going to be much harder to change your mechanics. Nadi also talked about how when he was in a blue lit environment and he was trying to change his mechanics, he eventually reached a point where he felt metabolically, I guess, run down, and he couldn't figure out why. So being outside is very important. Getting good water is important. Learning how to deal with stress, organize your life, that's all very important. Let me see if Michael can pop in again. Yeah, he might be gone. So that was kind of the middle of the story, guys. I'll give it a few more minutes, see if he pops back in. Otherwise, we might do a part 2 and go into how he ended up moving to Arizona and doing FP again. Let me see. Yeah, it's just me. Yeah, and I don't want to go too much into his story. I want to kind of. Oh, there he is. He's back. So I'm gonna let him in here.
Rodney.
All right. Welcome back.
Hey, so sorry. My phone overheated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My phone seems okay.
Sorry, I live in Arizona and it's not even that hot today, but it's still really hot, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you were going into how you change your environment, sunlight, grounding, water, but you were still in pain. So tell us a little bit how then you said you felt a little bit more ready to start FP again. So go ahead and go into that.
Yeah, it was time. So I was ready to kind of go all in. I was like, all right, that's it. Like ready to do it again. So it sounds really dramatic, but so I owned a house in Maryland, and this is part of the story. Like this is really personal, but so I owned this house and it was a rental property and I was getting like rental income from it. I was living in California, like also working. So it was good. It was like a little business I had. But I was so desperate, and I was so lost when I was living in Maryland. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, and I wasn't making a ton of money. I kind of went broke, like going to all these therapists. It's very costly to have these problems. And to also, like, I wasn't working all the time, like my career kind of ended because I wasn't able to use my body the way I used to be able to. So I was like, dude, the real estate market was like on fire at the time. So I'm like, I got this kind of crazy idea. I'm like, I'm going to sell this house and just fully fund like my healing journey. So that's what I did. Like I sold the house, went through the whole process. And then I was like financially stable, I bought myself some time, drove to Arizona, hit up Chris Lacken, Functional Patterns Arizona, started training with him. And I went into it kind of cynical, I was like, I tried this before. I didn't try it the best way, and I tried all these therapists. I tried everything. Things are getting worse. So I went in and I was just like, let's just see, And the first session, it was on. Like we just did like a basic movement that I had done before, but it got my glutes firing. It like relieved like half my back pain in like 15 minutes, And then like the stress was kind of off. I was like, all right, this is gonna work. And that's what I mean about like changing my lifestyle had such a dramatic effect because I had done these movements before, but my body was so messed up from my lifestyle that my body didn't take well to it. And when I tried them this time, it's like my body was like 10 times more adaptable. And so that's when I was like, all right, like it's on, this is working, like this was the move. So I was like, all right, let's sign up for a couple more sessions. And dude, I was living out of my car. I would go train with Chris, and then I'd drive out to like some area in the desert and like camp out. Wow. And then I'd drive back in 2 days later, do a session, and then go back and camp somewhere, you know? So I was just living out of my car, camping and doing FP. And then after like the third or fourth session, I was like, all right, like I'm dedicated to Chris and this practice. So I went and found like, I just started settling in. I found housing, started looking for jobs. That was 7 months ago. And I've been training 2 or 3 times a week with Chris every week since November.
Wow. So now tell us a bit of how you felt in these past 7 months, how your body's feeling, and some changes that you've experienced with pain and with your injuries.
All right. I'm having PTSD. I'm afraid of my phone overheating again.
You might have to go to the freezer or get an ice pack.
An ice pack for my phone. But dude, so yeah, the changes started to pile on pretty dramatically early on. So like I said, I had that SI joint pain. I had a lot of tension in my legs, a lot of back pain, a lot of breathing problems, really bad digestive problems, really bad anxiety. And so early on, like the sessions helped a lot, but they were, Rodney, they were so damn hard. Like getting my body to move and decompress and like open up this calcified tissue was so taxing and so uncomfortable. And it honestly, it would like make me feel a little bit better, but like the back pain would still be there like after a few months of training. And it was just such a long grind to start seeing results. But here's where I'm going with this. The first couple sessions I did like 1 or 2 weeks. And I had been like a daily like marijuana user. I was smoking weed daily, like for 10 plus years up until training with Chris. And then I remember like 1 or 2 weeks into it, I was sitting around and I'm like, I haven't smoked weed today. And it was like, I forgot to do it. And I'm like, what's going on? And I just didn't have the urge to do it. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I want to do it tomorrow. And I was like compulsive about it. Like I would just do it all the time, you know? I had to do it. I felt like I needed it to function. I was actually really afraid that I was never going to be able to quit like smoking weed. I was like, I'm just going to do this forever. Like I'm addicted to it. And people say it's like harmless and whatever. So I was like, so training with Chris a couple of times, I did like maybe 5 or 6 sessions and I just stopped smoking weed. I like forgot about it. And I remember I had all this weed and like it was in a box in my room and I'm like, I don't even want it. And then like a couple of weeks went by and I'm like, I still haven't smoked weed. Like, it's like my body did not want it at all. So that was a major change. I was like, something's changing in my brain where I'm way less compulsive and impulsive. It's like if something is harmful for me, and same with food, I started having the same, I was like, do I really need this coffee or this caffeine? Or I had like weird little food addictions. Like they got a lot better from the past, but I still had a little bit. And the same thing, I was like, do I really need this? And it was like my body, it was like my subconscious was driving me and it was making better decisions than my conscious was making. So my back still was hurting and stuff, but the emotional and the mental benefits, they came on a lot quicker. And that's when I was really hooked. I was like, something's going on here.
And then how's the pain now?
Yeah, so the pain's significantly reduced. So I've been thinking about it. It comes in like it comes in like big leaps. Like at least for me it did. I would be like grinding, doing sessions. And the pain would kind of change, but then like we'd have like a week or two where it'd be a breakthrough and the pain would dramatically reduce. And I remember within like 1 or 2 weeks, my SI joint pain totally went away. It was like, it felt like my hips moved and my SI joint I didn't feel it anymore. It was just stable. But then it's weird. The pain kind of moved up my back. So I started getting more lumbar pain where I didn't have lumbar pain. I had SI joint pain. And so it's like the pain shifts, but I think it's a win, you know, because the SI joint pain was terrible. And once that sacrum pain went away, my anxiety got way better. Like my mind state got way better. And then a couple more weeks, like a month or two goes by, and then that back pain starts to go away. And now when I walk, my hips feel like stable. Like I notice a difference, you know? And it's like the pains like come in waves. It just like dramatically reduce after we'll have these breakthrough sessions. And then it's like, wow. So yeah, 2 months ago, I still had a lot of lumbar pain. And today, like I barely have any pain, you know? Like it still feels stiff, but like the pain, the sharp pain, the acute pain, it's almost non-existent.
Yeah, it's a long process. And when you see the FP post saying address the system, not the pain, it's like if I wanted to ask you, oh, was it a hip flexion chamber? Was it your plank? It's like you can't pinpoint what's exactly helping. We're just trying to address the whole system, and over time, as you begin to move better, then the pain starts to go away. So yeah, I think the way you described it was a very similar process of what a lot of people go through. That's the process that I went through as well. So let's go a little bit into how you think FP is different than the other modalities that you tried, and go a little bit into that.
Yeah. So okay. So the first thing that comes to mind is FP is so active and so proactive, and it's so dynamic. Like I would go into PT, and it was almost just like, okay, they would listen to my symptoms, and they'd be like, all right, let's test your adductors, let's test this, let's test that, let's do some dry needling. And they'd almost like, they were kind of, I don't know, like it was just very passive. Where FP, it was like day one, Chris was just like, all right, let me see you run. Okay, I got an idea. Let's do this chamber. Let's do this corrective. Let's do this movement. And I'd be like, Chris, this hurts. I'm feeling this. This hurts this way. Doing this hurts. He'd be like, okay, do it a little different. And it was like a mechanic. Chris would just like tweak everything. And I think to myself, I'm like, I don't have to do that much work. Chris has to do 100 times more work. So I'd be like, Chris, this hurts my back, or it hurts in this way, but not this way. And I'd be like, okay, do it again. And he's just like a technician. He has to be like looking at everything and tweaking all my movements. And there's like fundamentals to it, but there's so much nuance to it too, you know? And it takes so much effort on the practitioner's part. And like, I feel like I drive him crazy because I'll be like, okay, well, it hurts this way. This still hurts. That still hurts. Like, I can't do it that way. And he'll just like keep tweaking, keep changing it. Or he knows when to force me to do it. He'll be like, your back looks good, just do it. Like the pain's good. So there's so much like mental effort and like problem solving on the practitioner's part. And it's active. Like there's no like passive stuff in FP. Like I go in there for an hour and we're like working for an hour, you know?
Yeah. We're not grabbing your joints and placing them somewhere else where we think they should be. We're trying to guide you into creating the tensions in your body to get you to where you should be. And we're using a blueprint to guide off of that. So we're using first principles, the gait cycle, throw-in mechanics to guide where we think your joint should be able to do and where your body should be positioned, instead of, well, the shoulders looks this way, so I think I should be able to bring it over here by itself or for whatever reason, because I think that should be the case. So yeah. And you also mentioned that you feel smarter, you feel like your brain works a little differently. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. Well, I'm like, is that just because I stopped smoking weed? I don't know. But yeah, FP has everything's like, I feel like I'm better with like numbers, and I can sit and focus longer, and I'm way more calm. And I'm like, okay, like I have no stress anymore. Or I do. Like I was really stressed out about this podcast. It's nerve-wracking to go on in front of however many people and talk, but I'm so much better at dealing. It's like stress doesn't affect me. It'll still happen, but I'm like unaffected by it. Like compared to what I used to be, you know?
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I feel like I just feel like my brain works, like my memory's way better. I'm more inclined with like numbers. Like I can sit and do like finance stuff and budget and look at investments. This is stuff like I never cared about doing before. But it's like all of a sudden my brain works again. So yeah, just overall, I feel smarter. And dude,
Yep.
here's a weird one. My music taste has changed. On Christmas Day, I'm like, dude, I don't listen to the same music anymore. And it was the same thing. Like I started doing a little bit of FP, and as my body changed, my music taste changed. So yeah,
Yes. Yeah, sometimes music can make you a little more neurotic, and it can stress you out a bit. I think that's why some people kind of go towards it, because it gives them that cortisol dump and that stress response that we might depend on. Yeah, another thing we were talking about before was how you were saying maybe you'll feel a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of pain here and there, but it doesn't bother you as much. It doesn't affect you as much, and it almost feels like when we're young, right? We get hurt, we fall, we do a weird movement, we feel it, and then it just goes away. So talking about that resilience,
yeah.
yeah. So that's something that I've felt as well. Sometimes you make a weird movement or something happens, and you feel the discomfort, but it's not like it puts you out for 2 weeks, which it used to.
You when you explained it, when you like told me about how you feel it too, it I was really excited because I was like, no one else. It's hard to explain how like I used to have all this back pain. It caused me so much anxiety, so much strife. It made me so uncomfortable mentally and emotionally. And now, if I get the same amount of pain, it barely bothers me. I'm like, I know my body's going to recover. This is just part of like the process. I'm still healing. It almost doesn't affect me emotionally. It affects me physically, but not emotionally. And you explained it. You were like, yeah, it makes like, you know, you'll overcome it. And that's, I'm like, yes, like you understand what I'm saying. And that's like my back was kind of hurting the other day, but I just went into Chris and he always asks me, he's like, how you feeling? I'm like, hey, like my back kind of hurt after the last session. And it's just like, we're little problem solvers. It's like, okay, well, what did we do? Why do we think it got hurt? Let's try this. And there's not a lot of emotion involved. I'm just like, yeah, it kind of hurt. I just did more MFR. I rested a little bit. That's it. You know, go about my day.
Yeah. So now it seems like if something does happen, it's a lot more. You can be a lot more proactive about it, and it doesn't affect you as much. Awesome. So then, anything else that you want to mention before we close it out?
Yeah, I just want to like express like my gratitude, right? And thank you, thank Nowdy for like all the work he's done. Like I gotta really thank Chris Lacken at Functional Patterns Arizona. Like this guy has put up with me for the last 7 months. And I was in a bind. I was in a tough spot when I showed up at his gym back in November. And he's helped me so much. Like obviously physically, he puts me through the movements, he cues me. He's like a master at that. But he's helped me like mentally, emotionally too. He's kind of counseled me on my behaviors and the way I conduct myself and the way I talk and act. And that's been I'll talk to him about like nutrition and stress and lifestyle. And he helps me a lot. Like he's a true like guide through the kind of journey that this is. So yeah, man, I'm really thankful. I can't thank you guys enough.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on, and hopefully you continue, and hope to hear from you from the rest of your journey.
That's it. I'll close it out with this. That's the other thing. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. I feel like it's been 7 months. It feels like it's been 5 years, but I'm like, I'm barely getting into this, you know? I'm like, what's it going to be like in like 3 years? And there's hundreds of people that have had results a million times better than mine, you know? So I'm like, those are the real people. It's like, I'm kind of just a normal person and it's working really well. It's saving my life, So I'm like, there's a lot of other people out there that have been tremendously helped by FP, you know?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you again coming on, and yeah, looking forward to hearing from you in a couple of years, seeing where you're at.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rodney. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
See you.
See ya. And guys, I'm going to be doing some of more of these podcasts throughout the week. So the next one is going to be Wednesday. I'm going to be speaking with doctor of chiropractic. So I'll make a post on the Instagram, and then back next week again. I'll probably do Sunday and Tuesday. So thanks you guys for tuning in, and catch you on the next one.